You're listening to Planet Zero, an original science fiction story by Brian Donahue, read by the author. Chapter 5, Gone. Redemption was silent save for the beeping and chirping of work consoles and the ever-present hum of its power core. The command crew lingered in silence as the realization of what had just transpired before their eyes sunk in. One moment they were all together, working the problem, focusing on their jobs, and the next, one of them was just gone. They all exchanged glances as they soaked in the mystery and terror of what appeared to be their new reality. Whatever that object was, and whomever built it, seemed to have snatched up their fellow crew member. The Redemption's commander stood to his feet and breathed deeply, intentionally, as if concentrating on it specifically. There was nothing else he could do to keep from panicking. He really wasn't the panicking type, but he'd never seen a fellow crew member snatched from a ship like this. This was a new and terrifying situation never encountered before in Earth's spacefaring history. If they were dealing with beings who had the technology to just take people out of thin air, and presumably send them to another location in the blink of an eye, then they were clearly outmatched in every conceivable way. Gates had to fight hard not to let his mind explore the possibilities, all of which were soaked in tragic outcomes for Atkinson and the rest of his crew. Surely a civilization intent on peace wouldn't just take someone like this without communicating something first, giving them a warning to back away from their planet. Surely. In light of the incredible object that was now sitting still at the center of the ocean below them, and the technological dwarfing of the Redemption that seemed obvious, he hoped, why would anyone find them a great enough threat to impose themselves and rip a fellow life form from their grasp? Commander Gates suddenly realized that his command crew were all looking at him for orders. They needed him to be their center, their point of focus, and their calm. Even Weapons Officer Moore, who had the most experience of anyone else on the crew, seemed a bit rattled. He cleared his throat and said, "We need answers. We need them as quickly as possible. Get me all the information you can." The young pilot, Frank Wright, spoke first. "Commander, I suggest we hightail it out of here. Put some distance between us and that huge pointy thing aimed at us." Danielle Johnson emphatically chimed in. "And just leave Cheryl here? Alone? How can you suggest such a thing?" Wright answered quickly, "I'm not suggesting abandoning her, just getting out of the sights of that huge pointy thing." Gates jumped in. "He's right, Danielle. There's no reason not to move out of range if we can. We can still take scans and gather information while we back off a bit." He walked over to the Sensor 1 station and added, "Focus on finding her signal on the planet. See if you can locate her. Make it your only priority." Turning to Sensor Station 2 and James Miller, he said, "Mr. Miller, make your priority finding life signs of any kind on that planet. See if you can focus your scans around that object and deeper into that hole it came from. We might be encountering a subterranean civilization." Gates then turned his attention to Brooks, his chief science officer. "Mr. Brooks, I want you to analyze every piece of data we collected from those waves and the light beam that took Atkinson from us. I need some answers yesterday." Brooks nodded at the commander and returned his attention to the readouts upon his work console. He went to work analyzing the waves first, but instructed the computer to begin dumping information on, as Wright called it, the big pointy thing. He thought to himself that this monstrosity of an object was surely more than just a matter transportation device. Talk about being bulky and slow to be used for just one single purpose. Surely it had a wide variety of uses. Gates walked up to the front of the command center and stood between the two chairs of his pilot and weapons officers. He stared intently at the planet and the massive object still aimed at his ship. He focused first on Wright. "All right, Mr. Wright. It seems to me that we should start a maneuver away from this part of the planet. I want to make this move slowly, though. I want whoever is down there to see us making a purposeful and thoughtful maneuver, not a knee-jerk reaction. I want to give them every idea that we are intelligent and level-headed." Wright responded quickly and confidently. "Copy that, sir. I'll adjust our heading and engage impulse at 1/4 speed. Is that satisfactory?" Gates responded, It is. Let's head just over the beach of this ocean. Just enough space to say ouch, but not so far as to say we are uninterested in making contact. Understood, answered Wright. He moved his hands over his console, and the ship slowly started a course change. Nothing changed on the planet as far as Gates could see with his eyes. A good sign. He turned to Moore, who had one hand hovering over the laser array and the other gripped on the torpedo controls. He smiled and said, "Steady, Moore," and "Attaboy. Stay ready, but only fire on my command." Moore responded with enthusiasm and assurance. "Of course, Commander, just wanted to be ready if you gave the word." Then a thought struck Gates like a baseball to the side of his head. "Hold on," he said. Gates spun around and offered a thought to the entire command crew. What if we're approaching this all wrong? What if us moving away, scanning the planet and keeping our finger on the trigger sends the wrong message? He normally would never think out loud like this, but he felt that the playing field of real-life experience just got leveled. Authenticity may be a useful tool, and offering his crew a sense of true collaboration could have a calming effect. Brooks spoke up first. "Interesting idea, Commander. However, I hardly think these folks would mind us moving out of the way and figuring out what just freaking happened to us." Gates nodded in agreement and said, "It seems likely they can sense or see everything we've got going on up here. They may be able to see that our weapons are armed. Do you agree, Mr. Brooks?" Brooks now swiveled his chair around to face the commander. He thought for a brief moment before answering. "In light of the demonstration we just witnessed, I'd say it's very likely they may even be able to hear what we're saying." Albert Fox jumped in incredulously. "No way in the world can they hear us right now. That's crazy technology, let alone rude." Fox, being an engineer, was paying close attention to everything happening down on the planet and how it all affected the ship. "If I may, sir?" Commander Gates raised his hand, palm up, and said, "The floor is yours, engineer." Fox stood from his chair and approached the center of the command room. Above his head was a black, narrow, and rectangular box on the ceiling. He pressed a button on his personal communicator device around his wrist, and a screen emerged from the ceiling. He tapped the button on the side of the lowering screen, and it came to life with colorful readouts. It displayed the outline of the ship as a cutaway, revealing all 5 decks as if the ship had been cut in half long ways for this image. He gently pressed the screen and manipulated the image to focus on the center of the Redemption. At its center was the computer core and the power core. Both were now highlighted, and he began to study it intently. His face lit up with a sudden realization. Gates noticed it instantly and asked, "What is it, Mr. Fox?" "I can't believe it, Commander. That beam not only scanned our command center, but the entire ship, including the computer core and power core. It's a good bet it knows exactly how we're powered and everything else." Moore asked, "What do you mean, everything else?" Fox tapped the side of the screen and it raised back up into the ceiling. He sighed and answered, "They know literally everything about this ship, about this crew, and about Earth." That information pushed Gates up from his chair as he asked, "Earth? Everything?" Albert Fox wiped the sweat from his forehead and answered, "Everything, Commander. Our computer core holds the sum of Earth's knowledge, history, literature, science, mathematics, religion, everything. They now know everything there is to know about us humans and our planet." "Well," Gates said, "that's one way to do it." He turned his attention back to the pilot. "Mr. Wright, how are we coming on that course adjustment?" The young pilot answered swiftly, "Oh, we're almost at our new destination. It's a nice sunny location. I'm pleased to report that we appear to be the only ones on the beach today." Wright was joking, as they were a considerable distance from the actual beach. Nevertheless, his humor caught everyone off guard and garnered a small chuckle from most of the crew. Gates welcomed this and the report. He added, "When we arrive, come to a full stop and keep us pointed in our current direction, perpendicular with the planet. Don't, I repeat, do not point us at the planet. Let's just stay in this posture of submission for the moment." Miller from Sensor Station 2 suddenly broke into the conversation. "Commander, something is happening, but it's localized. It's coming from inside the ship. Trying to pinpoint it now." Gates asked. From inside the ship? Not from the planet? Johnson stepped in as well to add, Affirmative, Commander. It's growing in intensity, too. Commander, if I'm not mistaken, it's being localized in our command center hallway. Gates turned just in time to see the start of a glowing light growing outward until the entire command center was filled with blinding light. Everyone shaded their eyes and winced at the intensity. The light faded quickly, and a figure was left in its place, as if it had arrived in the light itself. The figure emerged from the dark hallway. It was dressed in a tightly fitted black bodysuit that looked like it had scales all over it, not unlike a fish. It was masked with a glass-smooth helmet. There were no buttons or visible visor on the helmet. This figure appeared to be female, according to Earth's standards. It spoke with a deep and artificial tone. Welcome, crew of the Redemption. We greet you with solidarity and peace. Forgive us for the way in which we received your vessel into our space. We desired peaceful contact, but had to be sure of your intentions and capabilities before we could initiate compliance protocols. Gates stepped forward to assert himself, although he was sure this being knew exactly who he was. I'm Commander Benjamin Gates. May I ask who you are and why it was necessary to take one of my crew? The being tapped the side of its helmet, and a hissing sound could be heard. A small puff of some kind of vapor swooshed out from each side as the helmet split in two and revealed the face of the being inside. My God, said Gates, as he looked into the face of Cheryl Atkinson. Thank you for listening to this episode of Planet Zero. I'm Brian Donahue, author and narrator. If you're enjoying this podcast, do me a favor and share it all over social media so that other science fiction fans can discover it. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode of Planet Zero on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.